However, we find it as a problem, but that's a culture that is built on a caste system, although I don't like it. I do not like the caste system because I'm a brown guy and the caste system put me as the Dalits, the untouchables at the bottom. My Indian friend Vishnu, don't get it mixed up.
Many of you have been asking if one must come to Canada or not. So it's been more than 5 years now since I came here, and coming to Canada has been such a life-changing experience for me. To start with, I came with nothing, and today I have made properties after properties, and all of that today are paid off. Zero mortgage. Now my parents are happy that I send them $10,000 every month. And we are happy that we can take vacation at will every quarter. And our friends are so jealous of our lifestyle. You can also do this by coming here and making your friends jealous. All you need to do is one thing. Learn to lie and post happy faces on social media.
As a colored person who grew up in a minority family, I would love to tell you that my parents were super open-minded, but that would be a lie. And I love them to death, and I think they tried their best, but they came with a ton of stereotypes, and I don't think that my parents would have been the most supportive of other minorities, whether it's color or sexual orientation or whatever. And it was a lot of very complicated conversations to explain to them how to see the world differently. And that's what happened when you pluck them out of a third world country and drop them into Canada. And I think that my parents came far, a very long way. I remember when I first started dating my ex-wife, it was a very complicated thing for them to see me dating an Asian woman. Very complicated. They didn't understand. And then it was like, well, did you want me to marry or date a Sri Lankan? And they were like, yes, but as long as she's not Muslim. And it's like, what the hell are you, what are you saying? This is, and so I'm just trying to tell you that this idea of intersectionality, it does play out in a lot of our lives because we all come from families, especially our aging parents.
India has 1.5 billion people. Indians are busy in the bedroom. Indians are getting jiggy with it. Indians are banging. People, the Western culture over many decades have adopted the nuclear family, 2 children per family. However, the West have not anticipated the fact that the Indian population is still in the traditional family business, meaning that they have over maybe say 3 or 4 children, and because it is a caste culture that in some ways partakes in infanticide, meaning that the boys are preferential compared to the girls, and if a woman have 3-4 girls and no boys, she might go for a 5th time trying to get the boys because the culture is built on a patriarchal system. However, in this video, I am not here to discuss Indian sexual appetite or their population growth. I am here to discuss how Indians, many of them, migrate from a poor, disenfranchised background and can make it big time in the Western world.
I wish somebody had told this to me. We are all equal, and you will fight this demon inside you that says you are less than a lot of other people for reasons that will be hard to see until you're much older. And
however, Vishnu and Nana, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because your brown brother over here is working. You get it? With such a high population growth, the resources become meager. So for many Indians and other ethnicities around the world, like China and maybe say Africa, migration is the fastest way to move up and make some money. On that premise, the student migration is the most prominent.
I'm being aggressive to you because too many Indians are in Canada.
Many Indians and other ethnicities don't have enough economic clout. So to migrate as a student, to get the permanent residence and the green card is the ultimate way to get out of their country. So when you drive around North America, if you look at many of the colleges and universities, they're predominantly Indian students, because although they migrate to study, and although the college and universities and the country make a lot of money off the students, it's a symbiotic relationship. You collect my money as students, and I get the permanent residence and also the green card.
What'd you say then? I didn't say nothing. It wasn't me. It was a gentleman behind me, I guess.
I know there's a lot of fraud taking place in the student application system. We've seen on the mass media that yes, a lot of companies are basically charging students, giving them false visa so they can migrate to Canada. And some colleges are basically maybe like a front to give the student maybe accreditation, but also is to get the money. So we know there's fraud taking place. However, on the flip side, if you pay close attention anywhere you go in Canada, the colleges are packed with Indian students. The universities are packed with Indian students. Many of them just migrate with just enough money to pay the one-year student fee. And what they have to do, they have to find a part-time job. So when you drive around Canada, look at it. The gas stations attendants are Indians. You go in Tim Hortons, they are Indians. You go in Walmart, they are Indians. You go in Popeye restaurants, they're Indians. You go in the taxi, they are Indians. You go in the trucking, they're Indians. They're Indians everywhere. They have to hustle to make the money to pay the student fees.
5. Barge S. Dahan. Barge S. Dahan is the founder and CEO of Sandhurst Group of Companies, specializing in commercial real estate development.
Many Canadians are getting upset that Indians are taking all the job. I empathize and I understand the argument. However, let me bring you this scenario. And this scenario is basically illustrated in military terms. Say, for instance, you have an enemy over there, and both of you find a neutral ground to go off and have a battle. The chance of you winning or the enemy winning is 50-50, because guess what? The place is a neutral ground. So basically, both of you don't know the terrain. However, when you have that enemy comes on your territory and beat you at your game, then the point is that do you blame the enemy or do you blame yourself of being passive, too comfortable, and let the enemy beat you at your game? In real terms, many Canadians, including many black and white Canadians, are complaining about the Indians. But what happened is that we allow the Indians to migrate from India, come to North America. Many of them don't have any money, but guess what? I have to give the Indians credit. The Indians go to school, and I've said before in my previous video, whenever you go to a foreign country, the first thing you need to do is to learn the system, then you earn, because many of us here and migrate here, we earn, but we never learn, so we get burned. And what we do, which is natural and innate in every human being, is to blame the other. We love to blame the other because we failed. Yes, I know without a doubt. Trudeau has been a failure. Trudeau has given the Indians more priority than anybody else. Trudeau has not built the infrastructure to accommodate so many immigrants. And yes, the Canadian government has invested so much money in India. So that also is a symbiotic relationship. You bring over $30 billion in India and then, hey, you can take some of the Indian population as a trade-off.
Stop it. Get some help.
It's business from a high level. For the average person in the street, oh, it's a catastrophe. Tell me, where can you go in Canada and you don't see an Indian? Tell me, I am listening. Where can you go in Canada, no matter how far in the boonies, and you don't see an Indian? I have a friend of mine who came a few years ago as a student, and she had to do a placement way up somewhere in Alberta Bush, you know where the oil place is? And she said that when she went there, and she's looking around, she didn't see any black people, but she was just hoping and praying that she would see an Indian, because she knows that there are Indians everywhere. And she said, my God, champion, I didn't see an Indian. And she said, oh my Lord, I feel so alienated. I feel so lost. I feel so visible. Because up in this place, there's not one Indian. Because the Indians are everywhere. And that is what I admire. Because comfort is the enemy to success. And if Christopher Columbus didn't come out of his comfort zone and travel across the high seas, would the white Canadians be in this part of the Western world? Pioneers get slaughtered and settlers prosper. What happens, white Canadians? Let me talk to you for a moment. I know without a doubt you do not like ethnicities encroaching on your domain. You have a right to defend your interest. Your forefathers built these lands. But in the midst of all of that, pioneers get slaughtered and settlers prosper. The past generations of white, they toiled and they built it. The modern generations have become comfortable and passive. And they're enjoying the wealth of the inheritance. And because of such, you stop producing biologically, while in the meantime, the Indians are getting jiggy with it. The Indians are bagging and multiplying. And because Canada needs that human resources, where do you expect them to go?
Somebody needs to explain why. Why are there so many Indians in Canada? What am I missing here? Can somebody please explain why the fuck there's so many Indians here? Please. I gotta understand why.
Just to add another little story. I know this young man was a manager for this big bank. And he said to me, he said, Jamkin, I really want to hire my own people. He's a black male. He said, but what happened is that when I ask my own to do a little overtime, they're complaining, well, I have place to go, have things to do, you know, I have to do all of that. He said, when it goes up to Vishnu and Nina, want you to do like an overtime? He said, oh, sure, no problem. Okay, yes, okay, sure. Now, if you're an employer and your bottom line is to make money, and you need your employer to do a little bit extra and they don't want to do that, and you go to other employers who are willing to do the extra, who would you hire? The last time I checked, there's a saying in my culture, the humble calf sucks the most milk. Meaning that if you pay close attention to the Indian and Chinese wherever they go, they maintain humility. They stay passive. It can be passive aggressive, but they stay humble and passive because they know without a doubt it will allow them to rise to the top. That is why so many of them are become top managers and CEOs and running big companies. And we're sitting back and wondering, what happened? Because we fell asleep at the wheel.
Indians are taking over the world. Microsoft, Google, Adobe, Micron, IBM, and even Starbucks. All these companies have one thing in common. Their CEOs are from India. So why does this happen? The answer is simple. Indians are known to be smart, honest, intelligent, but most importantly, extremely hardworking. Indians abroad come from very humble backgrounds. Over 82% graduate college, over 94% have stable marriages, and over 65% support their families back home. This makes an average Indian professional a master at managing resources, and this rare combination allows Indians to quickly climb the corporate ladder.
Indians are not like many of us in the West. To be honest, how many of us can live with 5, 10, 20 persons in our space? For me personally, I love my space. I don't want any and everybody in my space. But if you look at the news recently, 2010, Indians are in the same space living.
In Brampton, they found 26 international students living in one basement, in one house.
When you have so many in the same space, what they do, they save money, but it shows you something very fundamental. That they can be in each other's space and maintain the communal unity. The Indian population is a religious group. It's a monolith. And because of that, they don't have to integrate or assimilate in the broader culture because they are comfortable in their own space. And when that is evident, it means their trust in the community. That is why they can build. For instance, if you're driving around Toronto or anywhere in Canada, you must realize that the Sikhs, especially the students, they will go to the temple for dinner. The Hindus will do the same. However, we find it as a problem, but that's a culture that is built on a caste system, although I don't like it. I do not like the caste system because I'm a brown guy. And the caste system put me as the Dalits, the untouchables at the bottom. My Indian friend, Vishnu, don't get it mixed up. When I look at the statistics, most of the Indians coming here are coming from a lower socioeconomic background than me. So don't call me no Dalit or don't put me down there, because I'm in a higher academic and economic bracket. However, I understand the traditionality of the hierarchy, which is bad. I will do a video on that in the future to make you guys understand that tradition is good until it makes no sense.
Now, you may have heard of something called the caste system in India, but did you know it happens here in Canada as well? It's a lottery by birth. And in some Indian homes, it dictates who you can date, who you can marry, the lowest ranking being a, quote, untouchable, which is a title our next guest was born into and was able to break free from.
It's a 3,000-year-old hierarchical system in India. And if you think about it as a pyramid, so at the top of the pyramid, you have the Brahmins, or who are the teachers, the priests. Then you have the warriors. And then you have the merchants and the business people, and then you have the laborers. And then there is a group that is seen so beneath them that they're outside of that system, they're subcaste, and those are the untouchables or Dalits, which means the broken ones. And so they do the menial jobs of cleaning sewers, and they're forced into these jobs. And like, it is unescapable. That is who you are by birth, and you cannot escape that.
Canada has a major brain drain. Many Canadians, and I'm talking about 3 and 4 generation Canadian, or the modern generation, you know, the Google generation, the millennials. Many have become comfortable. Many are not going for higher education, and the last time I've checked, human capital is the greatest investment.
Canadians have voted to send 19 Indian origin politicians to their parliament.
If you look at the Canadian political space, many Indians, and I'm talking about Hindus and Sikhs, are becoming members of parliament in the Canadian space. And it makes you wonder, coming from a society that is highly disenfranchised, poverty is rampant. And many Indians, when they come out from India, they don't settle. They don't relax. They educate themselves and they move up themselves to the ranks of power.
The people who came before, I mean, you look at it today in America, think of the successes that have happened. 1 in 10, more than 1 in 10 CEOs of Fortune 500 companies now are Indian immigrants who often studied in the United States. The old joke was you couldn't become a CEO in America if you were Indian. Now the joke is you can't become a CEO in America if you're not Indian. You know, whether it's Google or Microsoft or FedEx or Starbucks, you know, people who have come and made a big difference. Now,
1 in every 10 CEO of major companies in America is an Indian. So therefore, you have to ask yourself this question. How come this group, many of us, will criticize, ridicule, and scorn, will come in the same space like us with the same opportunities, and yet they can thrive and surpass us by miles?
I read that, man.
Many of us, we don't like the smell. Many of us, we don't like the way they dress, the way they behave, the way they socialize. We see them as a threat. Yes, without a doubt, it's not all good. Many of them are in nefarious things. But from my point of view, I have to give them credit. They have shown us that, especially in America, where the Indians' disposable income is the highest now.
So why is it that Indian immigrants from India, the country, and the ethnic group of Indians in America are crushing every other ethnic group in America, not by 5%, not by 10%, by 20% in income? 2021, 80% of Indian immigrants over 25 years old or older reported having at least a bachelor's degree versus only a third of all foreign-born and U.S.-born adults. At the top, you see the blue, engineering 36%. According to Oxford Academic, Indian immigrants represent 1% of the U.S. population, but 8% of the founders of high-tech companies and 1/3 of technology startups.
They have shown us that we cannot use race and ethnicity to define our upward mobility. It's our intellectual capital and our organization and how we treat each other and how we respect and love and build with each other. That's what they have shown us. So yes, for me, I want them to assimilate, I want them to integrate, I want them to marry brown people like me. Vishnu, don't get upset now. Don't get upset. Some of those Indian girls are always looking at the brother. Although, when I'm talking to them Indian girls, all Vishnu is just steering. Like, why are you talking to him? For Indians, even though you're a monolith, don't be closed-minded. The reason why you migrate and we migrate, we want a better life. And if your country was so great, and if you want to maintain all your cultures and your values, to be honest, you should have stayed there. But because you want a part of the Canadian and the American dream and you love it, what happens? It's not wise to come here and stay within your own circle. When you migrate and stay within your own circle or community, now this is where you get the rest of Canada now start to blaming you now as a threat because you're not assimilating, you're not integrating in the society, you're enjoying the fruits of the society, but you're not willing to go out of the society, and that becomes a threat to the citizens of that particular society.
I wish somebody had told this to me. We are all equal, and you will fight this demon inside you that says you are less than a lot of other people for reasons that will be hard to see until you're much, much older. And so you have to find either a set of people far, far away, like what I did, or one or two people really, really close to you, or maybe it's both, that will remind you in key moments of your life that that is true. Otherwise, you will give in to that beast. And it's not the end of the world, and you'll recover from it. I've made a lot of mistakes, but it requires a lot of energy. And sometimes it's just easier to just stop and give up. So I think that if you're starting out in the world, if you've been lucky to have a wonderful life and you had wonderful parents, man, you should go and give them a huge hug because they did you such a service that most folks don't do to most kids, unfortunately. And it's not the fault of these parents, but it's just tough. Life is tough. So give them a kiss and then figure out a way where you can just do work that validates you and where you feel like you're developing some kind of mastery. Who cares what anybody else thinks about it?
So in sum, many of us are complaining about the Indians. But we see that with a massive population growth, they had to migrate and they come through as students. However, they didn't come to Canada and America and stay passive and silent. They go to school. They get the green card, they get the PR, they get the accreditation, and the work, the dirty jobs many of us don't want. I don't like the caste system, without a doubt. I don't like it because it puts me at the bottom. But let me move past all of that emotionalism and all the frills and look at the fact that the people can come to a country with nothing and building powerful communities that we are envious of. And we wonder, how come these people are succeeding against all odds? People, on that note, Jamcan is out. And it's Indian success against the odds. I and I talking about. People, see you in the next video. Peace